Good evening. Hi. You guys, you're awesome. I had one time a guy, he was a drug dealer, pretty bad dude. He's a friend of mine. And he was in a worship service and got like literally hammered by the Holy Spirit. I mean, like he went down, like no one touched him. He just like went down and just like had a full-on experience with God. And he just like got up from that and was like completely transformed. And he was like, do you have a Bible? I need a Bible. I just got like really hungry to read the scriptures. And I remember about 6 days later, he came into the office where I was leading the church. And he came in, he goes, Danielle, I totally get it. I'm like, what? He goes, I've just been reading through the book of Revelation and I get it now. Like, it makes total sense. I totally understand everything. And I said, that's weird, because like I took a whole course at university on Revelation. I still am confused. Like, it's complicated. Like, I've always thought that's complicated. He goes, no, Danielle, I totally get it. Think about it. He said, just think about it for a second. You get to heaven and you look around and you go, holy. And he goes, and you look again and you go, holy. And he goes, and then you look again and you're just like, holy. And he's like, you just spend the rest of all like eternity going like, holy. And I was like, I think you get it. I think that guy's right. I think like holy, I mean, I don't even know what you imagine when you sing the word holy, right? Like if it's some sort of mystical reverence for God, but literally holy means like, we don't even know what it is. Like we don't even have a category for this. Like this is so different from and other than anything else we can imagine. We just kind of got to call it holy. Holy, like that's God at work in the world. Like that's the manifestation of Jesus. Like that's when God shows up, there's these moments that are like holy moments. And something else is happening, like a whole other realm is opening up, a whole other capacity, like a whole other thing that we can't even, the Apostle Paul put it like this, I pray that you would know God, even though it surpasses knowledge. Holy. Not with this, like not with this, but like with this, that you would know God. That you would know who Jesus is, that you would understand that Jesus is not like anything you could have ever even conceived of. And that revelation's ongoing. It's not even just like, now I know. It's like, holy. And the good news is that I've been experiencing that relentlessly, like in my life as a follower of Jesus. I had an encounter with Jesus in a jail cell when I was 17 years old, addicted to drugs, completely lost, dead inside. And I had an encounter with Jesus in that cell. He came and visited me there. It was bizarre and weird and hard for me to even explain to you to this day, but something went holy. In that holy, that other than, that like different from, that like I didn't expect that, I didn't know that, I don't even know what to do with this. That presence of love, of radical welcome, of light turns something on the inside of me. And I could start to begin to see. And what I began to see was so different than what I had imagined. And it just kept on going. So when I had my son, he was about 3, Judah, my middle son, his favorite words, he's about 2.5. His favorite words are no way. That's like as a little kid, he used to be like, no way. He's just like, no way all the time. And especially when it came to any kind of medicine, he was just like not interested. He had an ear infection. I was like, I got to get this guy some medicine or he's going to die. So my eldest son and I concocted a plan to give this kid some medicine. And what we did, I went to the doctor and I was like, I need some like special goods because this kid does not like taking medicine. He goes, I got it. And he gave me this banana flavored liquid penicillin. He said, all the kids love this. I'm like, okay. So I bring it home and my son and I concoct this plan. And we're just like, I know, we're just going to convince this kid. Like we're going to like drama him into it. So we start doing this like, who wants some banana? We're just like playing this like he's a monkey, I'm a monkey. He's chasing me for the medicine. And, and then we're just like, are there any other monkeys that want some? We're doing that whole thing. And he's like, no way. So then we're like, he's more of a tiger sort of a guy. So then my son's like, ooh, well, the tiger eats all the medicine, like all the banana, like all the monkeys that eat this medicine. The tiger, are there any tigers that want this? We're just like, and the kid's like, no way. So then I finally resorted to like the most compassionate and loving and motherly impulse inside of me. And I just held that little sucker down. I remember he's wrestling on the ground, and I'm just like, I'm arming his shoulders and I'm sitting on top of him, and then his head's still like, no way, no way. And I'm like, Zion, quick, grab his head. So my other son grabs his head, and I ever so gently and lovingly and kindly just shove that medicine down that little kid's throat. And I say, yes, way. And then that's when God spoke to me. How rude in the middle of a family moment. And said, oh, I see, Danielle, you do your salvation like you do your medicine. I said, well, of course I do. People are dying of an infection, right? People are dying, like they're gonna die. Like I'm gonna shove that down there. I'm just like, I'm gonna make my bananas. I'm just like, somebody's like, whatever it takes. Like, finally, I'm just gonna hold you down. I've locked the doors. We're gonna administer the medicine. He said, no, it's not a quality issue. I'm not worried about the quality. I'm just a little worried about the quantity. There's more. He said, you keep talking. You're doing this salvation thing like it's medicine. It's like that I distributed in vials, here, just enough to cure what ails you. He goes, I need you to start thinking about oceans. I need you to start not thinking about salvation as some little ingredient to cure what ails you. I need you to start thinking about salvation as this whole other way of life. This unending discovery of more of holy. I need you to come with me, not to get the medicine inside of you, but to get you inside of salvation. I need you to lose yourself to this ocean of love. This bigger than, more than, greater than, different from, other than capacity of God at work in the world. I need you to come with me. That's what salvation is this invitation into the more, into the endless, into the eternal holiness of God. Holy. That's the invitation. Isn't it cool? We could do the medicine thing if you want. But it's not enough. And as a matter of fact, not only is it enough, but it'll keep you living this small, tiny life with you still at the center. When Jesus invites us to lose our tiny little lives for something so much greater. So there's this story in the Bible. It's a cool story. And it features Judas and Mary. So this, you probably know this one where Jesus is about to go die. He's on his way to the cross. It's totally, people know this. This is the trajectory of his life. He's facing rejection. There's already a conspiracy out for his life. He's moving in that direction towards this suffering, towards this death. His popularity is not at an all-time high, and people are leaving him. He gets to a house. It's in John's Gospel, chapter 12. You can read a little bit later if you want. He gets to this house, and Lazarus is there. That's the guy he raised from the dead. Speaking of holy, the first Walking Dead series in John chapter 9. There he is. And Mary does this thing. She takes her alabaster jar. She takes this perfume, which is really like her dowry. This is like her backup plan. She takes her plan B and she breaks it open and pours it on the feet of Jesus. And everyone is ticked off. I say everyone's ticked off because there's another version of that story. Like I said, the guys can't get their story straight, but this other guy who says that everybody was ticked off. All the disciples were like, this is such a waste. This is ridiculous. In John's gospel, it says Judas was ticked off. It names him specifically. This is Judas's issue because he's a jerk, and we all know it. Because what do you think of when I say the name Judas? Traitor. Yeah, it's synonymous, right? If I was to call you a Judas, you wouldn't be like, well, that's an interesting name. You'd be like, come here. I'm not a Judas. Matter of fact, even in the scriptures, whenever they talk about Judas, they kind of insert, they'll put little brackets in there, go like, he's the bad guy. Like literally, he's the bad guy. And I remember reading that. I've always read that story. I've always read Judas through the lens of bad guy. He's a bad guy. And then my son came home with the Darth Vader shirt on. I have a rule. So I have 3 boys. In my house, the Force is strong. Okay, so we're all big Star Wars fans. So I said the only rule I have about the Star Wars thing is like darkness has enough representation. So I just want Jedis only on our, we're good guys, okay? I just want us to be good guys, so I'm just gonna project that into the world. So if you got a shirt on, it's gonna be a good guy's shirt. So my son comes home with Darth Vader. Now the shirt is Darth Vader kayaking, so there's that. But I said to him, dude, what's with the shirt, man? I have one rule, you know what I'm saying? I'm pretty open, but one rule, and you had to break that rule. Why do you have Darth Vader on your shirt? And my mom's like, my son's like, what are you talking about? It's Darth Vader. And I'm like, yeah, it's Darth Vader. I said, no bad guys on the shirt. And my son said to him, he's not a bad guy. And I'm like, he's a bad guy. He's the definition of bad guy. He goes, he is not a bad guy. I'm like, he's a bad, and we're having this he's a bad guy, he's not a bad guy. I'm like, hon, when minor music plays, when a character enters the scene, it's a universal sign that he's a bad guy, you know what I'm saying? And we're having this full-on discussion about whether or not Darth Vader is a bad guy. And then I remembered, oh, I see what's happening. When I met Darth Vader, I'm old enough that when I met Darth Vader, I literally met the dark Sith Lord strangle-holding people from a distance, right? I met that black helmet on the screen. As a little kid, I remember just going bad guy. I think I had nightmares of strangling, but he's a bad guy. I met Darth Vader as a bad guy. So in my mind, he's a bad guy. But when my son met Darth Vader, he met Anakin. Wasn't quite a bad guy. I mean, he's a bad actor. But it doesn't make him a bad guy. I mean, he was the promising Jedi. He's the guy, right? He's the one. He's the one that's going to bring balance to the Force. He's all full of promise. I mean, come on. And then he had sort of a blip. He had some problems. Some anger, jealousy, rage, anger, jealousy, rage, and then some more anger, jealousy, rage, and then that turned into violence, and then that violence fed the anger and the jealousy and the rage, and then he turned into Darth Vader. But then, of course, at the end, he balances his Force. My son's like, I don't understand. And I suddenly started realizing that every time I read the life story of Judas, I've only ever been bad guy. And I wondered if there might be another way to read the story of Judas. I might need to revisit the dismissal of the bad guy so that I could learn what it means to follow Jesus. How could I live a life? Oh, think about this. Judas is walking with Jesus, talking with Jesus, hanging out with Jesus for over 2 years, personally mentored by Jesus. If you were to ask Judas, are you a follower of Jesus, what would Judas say? Yeah. You say to Jesus, but are you really a follower of Jesus? I mean, have you left everything and followed Jesus? What would he say? Yeah. I literally am a disciple of Jesus. Every day I'm listening to the teachings of Jesus. I'm walking towards Jesus. I'm listening. I'm with Jesus. When Jesus is rejected, I'm rejected. Judas is one of the ones that goes out with when they're sent out in twos. Judas is one of those twos. When Judas comes back from his first mission trip, Jesus is like, woohoo! I saw Satan fall like lightning from the sky. That's how cool this whole thing is. Jesus is lit up. Judas is healing people. Judas is telling people about Jesus. So what happens to Judas? What happens to him? How does he become the Darth Vader of the disciples? And better yet, here's a good question. How do I not? How do I not? Because I can say I follow Jesus, I can be serious about following Jesus, but what does it actually mean to move towards Jesus? To not be a casualty like Judas was. And there's a dynamic that's happening in this John 12 story that I think might give us a clue. So there's a brain scientist, her name is Helen Fisher, and she wanted to know what happens to people's brains when they're in love. Anybody? Anybody fall in love yet? Somebody's here specializing in love? Yes? It's something, huh? I mean, like, I don't know if you've had this yet or not, but like, it's something weird happens to you when you fall in love. Like I'm not a morning person, but my husband now is a morning person. And when I fell in love with him and he was like, hey, you want to grab coffee before work at like 6 a.m.? I was like, I would love to. Like, and even as I was saying the words, I was like, no, you wouldn't. You hate getting up in the morning. But I literally was like, it would be my pleasure. Like, of course I would like, I mean, what happened to me? And Helen Fisher is like neurologist. She's just like, I need to know what's happening because people go weird when they're in love. Like stuff like they change, like weird things happen. So she got all these volunteers who were in love and she put them into an MRI machine and she measured their brains. And she discovered that everybody who's in love, when you measure their brain, there's 3 things that happen in the brain that changes when you're in love. This is like real. This is a TED Talk. You can go listen to it if you want. The first thing is that the pleasure area of your brain is lit up. You're just like, I would love to meet you for coffee at 6 a.m. It would legitimately be a pleasure. What? And then your risk factor goes way up. You're just like all in for sure. Like, I know this is risky behavior, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And then your attachment, this like attachment area of your brain is lit up. And those 3 areas of your brain are completely alive and firing when you're in love. And if you think about this story and you look at the factors of the story, because actually Judas is kind of right. Like, I don't know about you, but like I've spent my whole life serving people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Like, I would be with the crowd that was like, why did we just waste a whole year's wages on like a foot bath for Jesus? This seems excessive. This seems wrong. Like, why are we doing that? Like this, I would be with those guys. I know I'm not supposed to. I shouldn't probably admit that. But like, honestly, like I'd just be like, what? Why? But Jesus seems to understand what's actually happening. And all of Mary's behavior in this scenario is all Helen Fisher-esque. Like, if there were MRI machines back there and you put Mary in it and mentioned Jesus to her, you know what would happen? Her brain would start firing. I mean, she didn't have to. Nobody was like, you know what Jesus really needs? Pedicure. You know what real disciples would do? There's no obligation. There's no expectation. As a matter of fact, it's a surprise. It might even be a surprise to Mary. She's just like, I got to do that. I got to do something. I got to do more. It'd be a pleasure for me to take my plan B, my entire bank account, my backup plan, like my dowry, my potential of a future. I'd love to just pour it on the feet of Jesus. It would just be an honor. Pleasure. And I know that when I do this, it actually means the end of any other possibility of a way out. Like, this is the end of a way out. All I've got now is Jesus, and I know his popularity is not going up, it's going down. And I know where this trajectory's headed because Jesus has said it a lot. I'm headed to the cross, and I know this is happening, and yet I'm going to do it anyway. Risk. And the whole reason I'm going to do this, the whole reason I'm going to pour out my life, the whole reason I'm going to be in all the way is because I want to be with him. Attachment. Now I was thinking about, okay, Mary's in love. There's definitely something special about her. And we know that this posture, this love that drives Mary right then in that room also drives her further towards Christ. Towards the cross, towards the resurrection, towards pouring her life out, towards living a life of exemplary discipleship. This is where that goes. Love goes there. Judas, he's doing something else. What would you say is the opposite of pleasure? I mean, your brain may go straight to pain, but I don't actually think it is pain. and this is just some advice. This is free advice. You can write this down in case you get married one day. Here it is. If you want to kill love, go for duty. Live obligated. It's the opposite of love. Obligation. To do things because you have to. This is why religion kills relationship. It's an obligation. You go into duty, the motions. You have to do this. Judas is in an obligated, in a duty. He's looking at the law. He's looking at the books. He's looking at the regulations. He's like, this isn't adding up. And what's the opposite of risk? Safety. This isn't fiscally responsible. This isn't good for our safety plan. Like, what happens when Jesus, like, what are we gonna do? Like, what's that? And he's like an accountant, except like he's badly motivated, but he's playing it safe. And literally this moment, which actually isn't even a big moment, you would think if you're gonna go off the rails when it comes to Jesus, if you're gonna move away from Jesus, there are gonna be these great big defining moments. You're gonna be like, that's it, I've had enough, and you're gonna storm out or something like that. I don't know, there's some glorious kind of idea of a loss of faith, but that's not what happens. It's just a tiny decision that he makes, and I think has made over time with Jesus, where instead of moving towards love, he moves away from it. Just a bit, he detaches himself. Quite literally, the opposite of attachment is detachment. He detaches himself. He moves away. He plays it safe. He takes no risks. He does what's obligated of him to do. He does his duty. He keeps up the motion without the heart. Jesus says, actually, in this passage of scripture, he says, what this woman has done for me will be preached every time the gospel story is told. What? Have you ever led the story of Jesus with the woman in an alabaster box? Because I've preached around the world and I've never led with that story. But Jesus says every time the gospel's preached, what this woman does, it'll be told. What does he mean? So I used to think that the Trinity had this conversation in heaven, and it went something like this. Oh, man, those humans. What are we going to do? And the Holy Spirit's like, I don't know. I tried. And Jesus is like, there's crickets. And Jesus is like, okay, fine. I'll do it. If there's nobody else, I'll take this one for the team. I mean, somebody has to assume the position. You know what I mean? Like, okay, fine. But then I was reading in Hebrews, and it says this: for the joy set before him, Jesus endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the Father. I'm sorry, what? For the duty, for the obligation inherent in being Jesus. God had to do something. No, Jesus is like, pick me. I can't wait. I would love to actually kenosis. I would love to empty myself of all of my majesty and assume the human condition. As a matter of fact, if you pay attention to when Jesus introduces himself in Scripture, it's awesome. He always says, hi, I'm the Son of Man. If he refers to himself, the title he uses is Son of Man. You know what that's translated as? The human one. Jesus is walking around going, hi, I'm Jesus. I'm human. He's not ashamed of it. He's not despising it. He can't wait. I'm human. For God so loved the created cosmos. It was for the joy of God. It was for his pleasure that he became human. It was for his pleasure that he recreated things, that he could restore us to our original purpose, that he could invite us into the holy of God's existence. It was for joy. And talk about risk. I mean, could he have risked any more? He risked everything he had. He held nothing back. Forget about an alabaster box, a dowry, his whole entire life, his whole entire body. He's like, I'm all in. What will this take? Will it take rejection? Count me in. Will it take pain? Okay, let's do it. Will it take suffering? All right, I'll do that too. Will it take death? Okay. Let's do this thing all in. And why did he do it? To be close to you, to connect. You put Jesus's brain in an MRI machine and mention your name, you know what happens? Lights up. Pleasure and risk and attachment. I mean, this is the gospel. Every time the gospel is preached, what that woman did will be preached, because what that woman did was fall in love. And the gospel, if it is anything, it is this. It is a love story of epic proportions. You don't have to be a bad guy. You simply just need to move towards. You need to move towards. Because the love that you need to even give to Jesus is a love first that you receive. Don't worry. If you're sitting there going like, I don't have a lot of feelings towards Jesus, like I'm not sure if I'm like ready for that, like I'm all in, I don't know, I feel a bit obligated, I've been doing this, going through the motions things, maybe I'm gonna be Judas, don't worry. That you just simply need to receive. Jesus has enough love for all of us. You receive the love so you can give the love, so you can become the love. Gospel is love. So I'm going to invite you tonight to move towards. That's it. Just move towards. And what Jesus wants to do in your life and my life is to invite you into the holy of his love. It is different from, it is other than, it is bigger than, it is categorically stranger than any other kind. It's holy. It's holy. But I'm telling you this right now, he is inviting you not to come get a dose of penicillin. No. He's inviting you to the ocean. He's inviting you to like immerse yourself into an ocean of God's love. Is there anyone that wants to receive that kind of love? Anyone that wants to dive into that deep place, to see that holy, to experience that kind of attachment that could take you all the way. Yeah, I want you to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. When you breathe in this time, I want you to think about be. Just breathe in, be. When you breathe out, I want you to breathe out loved. Do it again, be. And breathe out loved. Sometimes I wonder, if Judas could have received love, who he might have been. I wonder if Judas didn't shut himself off to love, even after the betrayal. I mean, Peter betrayed him. What's the difference? The difference is Peter hung on long enough to have Jesus find him and give him love. And the love of God warmed up his heart, forgave his burden, healed him, and sent him out again. I mean, I've got images of Jesus finding Judas somewhere in the afterlife, saying, hey, buddy, I know the religious folks couldn't help you, but I got something that can. It's not too late. It's not too hard. Let him love you. Oh, we're going to have a time. We're going to have a time of worship and a time of prayer. You might want to sit right where you are and just take deep breaths of love. You don't have to do anything at all. You don't have to try to work yourself up into some religious frenzy. Just receive the love of God. It is absolute joy for him to give it to you. He just wants you to be loved. Holy. Or maybe like that woman. You make yourself all in. You pour it out somehow tonight. Maybe you want to kneel where you are. Maybe you want to come up here and receive prayer and just have somebody else appear, just speak to you and just say, like, you're loved, you are known. Maybe you want to move towards Jesus for this attachment, not for some other reason, just because you want to be near him. You want to touch that holy. You want to enter that ocean. You want to, he's so worthy. So worthy. So God, even now, I pray for my friends. And I pray for me too. I pray that you would reawaken, you would refresh, you would beckon us one more time into this boundless ocean of love, where you would redeem us and forgive us and fill us and cleanse us and empower us and inspire us. Oh God, save us from detached religious obligations. Save us from fear and self-loathing. Save us from dying in our own filth. Save us. And love us back to life. Love us back to life. So the boundless ocean is flowing. I'm going to invite the prayer team to come. If you want to receive some prayer, please come. No spectators in this ocean. The water's deep. It's cool. It's beautiful. Lots of room. Come and receive. Stay and receive. Be loved.